We get so many mixed messages from mainstream media about what diet is healthier, what diet's going to help your skin, what's going to help you lose weight, on and on and on and on. It gets so confusing. Many people try this, that, or the other. They get frustrated. They give up. They say, screw it. They quit. I can't blame them because they've gotten so many mixed messages. I have a beautiful friend of mine that I'm going to chat with today, and I want to share this discussion with you because what she discovered on her journey back to good health, I think will help so many people out there who are frustrated, who've given up. This is the great Kelly Hogan. Welcome, Kelly.
Hello, Dr. Barry. So good to see you again.
Yes, yes, yes. We've had several discussions in the past, both virtually and in person, and you're one of my favorite people on the planet.
Thank you. Same,
And
man. Same.
thank you. And I think that a discussion with you always helps people understand a little bit more about diet and how important this is versus that. You're a common sense country person just like me. Stuff has to make sense. 1+1 has to equal 2, or it's just not going to float.
That's right. No, absolutely. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. So we're recording this in front of our private community today, and we'll release it later on YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube, realize that you don't get the opportunity to ask experts like Kelly Hogan questions during my interviews, but our private community does. And so all of our tribe members watching this, if you have a question for Kelly that's relevant, please keep it succinct and type it into the comments, and I will pull up questions as we go along if that's okay with Kelly.
Absolutely. I might even answer the irrelevant ones. I don't know.
There you go. Yeah, me too. You never know where it might go. So if anybody is aware of you, they know that you've had a rather astounding health transformation. And I just want to start with just a little bit of your backstory for people who don't know. What made you say, you know what, I've had enough of this, eating my old way, living my old life. I'm going to do something about this. What was the trigger for you? It's like, that's it. I've had enough.
I honestly think I would have tried this much earlier if I had known better. So I'm one of those where I had to know better before I could do better. And I was a child of the 80s. Well, born in 79, but child of the 80s who was
Sure.
told, fat free, fat free, fat free. If you are fat, you are eating too much fat. And so my house was just growing up. It was a Snackwell's house. If
Yeah.
anybody knows of the Snackwells, they created these delightful little cookies in a green box that were fat free, and they replaced the fat with sugar. And I was eating those, and my family kept buying them. Probably from my dad and I. We were the two heavy ones in the house. My mom and my brother, they could eat anything they wanted, and they stayed slim. So my dad and I constituted us becoming a Snackwell's family. And I just
Gotcha.
kept getting bigger and bigger. And through high school, I learned how to diet. So I learned that if I ate one lean cuisine per day, 400 calories, and drank one Ensure for breakfast, I don't even know how many calories, that I could lose weight. And I would do this every spring. You know why? Because I would go to the prom. I went to the prom all 4 years with guy friends would invite me to prom mostly. And every year it was like, this is it. I've got to lose weight. And I would. And then from that came a binge eating issue.
Sure.
Because
Sure.
you can only starve yourself for so long. And I would gain back even more than I had ever lost. Then I went off to college and put on about 50 pounds. Then I got married really young and ended up at 260 pounds. And at that point, it wasn't just the same weight issue I'd been dealing with. I also started getting really painful boils, especially on the backs of my legs and on my backside. It was really not fun. And also it made me feel like, was it a hygiene thing? Like I kept getting more different soaps and antibacterial things. And it turns out it was just my diet. I was really inflamed. So I know you have talked about all the doctors who get it wrong, and you've graciously admitted that you were one of them at one point who now gets it very much right. But I found a doctor who was getting it right in 2009. He told me in 2009, it's excessive carbohydrate intake. That is your problem. It's not your soap. Oh, well, okay, he gave me something to change, and it's not that I had, hit the end of my rope over and over. It's like this was the first time somebody gave me something that actually worked because
Yep.
all I had known before was drop the fat, drop the calories, and run, and that was getting me nowhere.
I want to dig into that family dynamic a little more. I don't think we've discussed that before. So your mom and your brother were relatively thin,
Yes.
and you inherited your fat genes from dad.
Yes.
And so you were just a little girl growing up, and you didn't know anything about anything, but your mom believed that it's all about the calories. And so that's why you said you grew up in a snack whale's house, because you could have a serving. It's 100 calories. That's it, man.
Right.
And right. And so many women fall prey to this, either a mom, a grandmother, an aunt. They don't, I mean, your mom loves you. She didn't want to cause you any harm. She was doing what she thought was best.
For sure.
And walk us through just a typical day of your mom's advice and your mom trying to help you, but unintentionally causing harm.
Yeah, so my mom had never had to diet at all. She was she was always naturally thin. I've seen lots of pictures of her growing up, no weight issues whatsoever, but she was a very much a country girl. They raised hogs and slaughtered hogs, and she grew up eating hogs. She did not have health problems. My dad was a country boy, but even in his pictures as a little boy, I don't know what he was eating. They were not farmers, but he was always just the little round one in the family. And people would say to me frequently, even though I have my mom's features, I thought I looked like my mom. All anybody could see was I was chubby like dad. So they would say,
Sure.
"You look just like your daddy." I was like, just what every chubby kid wants to hear.
Right.
Yeah. And my mom was so beautiful. I would have loved for anyone to have said, or she is so beautiful. My mom is still in excellent health. But I would have loved for anyone to compare me to her. So it's not that she was so much giving advice. She just had no experience or knowledge of why she wasn't heavy, why my dad was. My dad was honestly the one buying most of the fat-free stuff. He was the one who was really worried about his future health. His triglycerides at one point, this is true story I remember from my childhood, and I have confirmed it with my dad. Triglycerides were over 900. His doctor said, and he told us as a family, he's like, my doctor has said, I'm a ticking time bomb. Well, thankfully, his doctor did say, cut out sugar. Okay. But then we also thought, but if we're going to lose weight, we obviously have to eat low calorie and cut out the fat too. So we grew up kind of thinking like, well, sugar isn't great. But my mom was buying sugar because she didn't have, like, we always had soda in the house. I was chugging lots of soda to wash down those snack wells. It was a weird dynamic. They were not on the same page diet-wise. And even though they had the best intentions, I think it turned out to be the worst combo for me because dad's doing fat-free. Mom has no weight problem, so we're chugging soda. And I just kept getting bigger and bigger. And to their credit, though, there was no body shaming in my house. They would say things like, maybe we could all take some walks. And I think I always just thought, yep, that's for me. They're doing this for me. But my mom never let on that I was anything less than beautiful to her, which I really am grateful for now.
So it wasn't like your dad wasn't trying. He was trying. He was
Absolutely.
just following the wrong mainstream advice.
Yes. And now he is 75 years old and he eats lots of meat and he does very low carb. He knows fat is not the problem. He looks good, man. And I don't know if he's still doing it, but for a while he was walking 7 to 9 miles every day. He felt so great. He sleeps well now and he's no longer a big guy. I'm very honored if somebody says, wow, you look like your daddy.
Nice,
Great.
nice. And I think this is a very common story. Your mom didn't have a degree in nutrition. She just was taught by her mom. And then she didn't have a weight problem. So she never had to really think about that. Your dad did have a weight problem. He was trying to follow the kind of standard mainstream advice. It wasn't working. And so you were kind of stuck in this household where literally your parents were feeding you exactly the wrong things, but they loved you without measure, and they were trying their best to do the right thing. Hence, let's go for a walk. They were trying everything they knew to do. And then how were you when this doctor gave you this advice that it's just too much sugar and carbohydrates?
25. I'm the luckiest soul ever. This fall, I'm 45 now, about to turn 46, but it'll be 20 years this November, 20 years this November since he gave me that advice. And
just so the viewers know, this is what 45 looks like on the right. How were you on the left?
that was, I mean, probably a week or so before I actually started. It may have even been that same week. Like that is the peak of my height. I mean, excuse me, my weight, the
Yep.
peak of when I felt awful. I was smiling there, but that was actually taken at Vacation Bible School, hence the puppet and the lay. Yes, I was up at VBS and I was about to present, and my mom walked up and said, "Let me get a picture." And I really wanted to just die. In that moment, my right leg, I had a patch of cellulitis. For those who don't know, this is not cellulite. Cellulitis it was a massive patch on my right leg that was hard and hot and red. And it made it so hard for me to even get up on the altar that night to do this skit for Bible school. But I smiled for the camera and I did the skit, and I really did not want anyone to see me. I felt miserable, in pain. It was the cellulitis had come from another boil. It had flared up there, and I had trouble even getting up those 3 steps. Now, this picture on the left, I was a good bit younger. I was probably more like 22 at that point, and probably weighed more like 230 instead of 260.
Yeah.
But I remember trying awfully hard at that point. We were in another country. I was on a field trip for college. My husband, who at that point was just a boyfriend, he was there along with a whole bunch of other college kids that we were traveling with. And I just remember trying to lose weight before that trip. And I did. That was me trying super hard and feeling like, whoo, I have lost some weight for this trip to Rome. And that was the best I could do at that point. And I was pretty pleased.
And you mentioned earlier, nobody can starve themselves forever.
No.
But that's what most of us think. Oh, I need to lose some weight. I'm going to tighten up. I'm going to cut back on portions. I'm going to eat low fat. I'm going to, just effectively starve myself until I lose some of this stored body fat. That is, if you ask any teenage girl in the world, I need to lose 20 pounds. What should I do? They're going to say you need to just basically starve yourself. They may use other words, but that's what the message is going to be. That's what the message is from TikTok, mainstream media, all the glamour and fashion magazines. Now we've got Ozempic and this other stuff, which is basically a pharmaceutically enforced semi-starvation.
Yes.
How much interaction have you had with girls in their early teens, early 20s, who that's what they thought they were supposed to do? And what was their reaction when you're like, actually, no, here's what you should do?
Most of the people I end up working with are not in their late teens and 20s. It's women who are even like around my age or mostly older. And they've been trying that technique for decades. And they are still blown away but I can't. And I get them where they'll say, I can't eat more than 1,200 calories or I will gain. I'm like, I understand, but 1,200 calories of what? What were you eating? That's what obviously matters the most. And the fact is, if they start eating, let's say they've been doing 1,200 calories of rice cakes and whatever junk they were doing before, similar to the snack wells, and then they do start eating an appropriate amount of meat, let's just say 2,000 calories of meat, they freak out because they will sometimes gain weight at first. Their body has down-regulated to where they can't support their own libido, growing hair, growing nails. They have shut their systems down. And I'm like, yes, I'm going to need you to slowly at least start working your way up to real nutrition. They don't have the energy to do anything fun in bed, let alone go to the gym. Like you're starving for years on food that doesn't have the nutrition that you need.
And you got an intervention from a doctor when you were 25 years old.
Yes.
We know, you and I both know that there are millions of boys and girls in their teens, millions of men and women in their 20s who would love to get back closer to an ideal body weight, would love to lose fat. Yet somehow it's like the ketovore, carnivore message is not getting to them.
Right.
Why do you think that is? And what do we need to do about that? Well, I mean, how happy would you have been if somebody had approached you when you were not 25, but 15 and said, Kelly
Absolutely.
Hogan, honey, let me tell you what you need to do.
Yeah. Well, this message is so counter to what I think is trying to be spread. It's all about stop eating meat. It's bad for the planet. It's bad for your health. That is being pushed so hard that it's really hard for the voices saying, yeah, but I did the total opposite of that and it changed my life. I do think there are some very loud voices who would like everyone to believe the total opposite of this. So even still, I sometimes feel like, gosh, I say the same thing over and over. And I know you must feel like a broken record. And yet every time we say it, I'm sure for you too, there will be someone, even today, who hears this, who says, eat more meat to lose weight and feel better. Yes, exactly that. Yes.
Now, this doctor who gave you this advice,
Yeah.
you were 25 years old, and I'm assuming this was kind of your family doctor,
Yes,
or
my dad's doctor.
your dad's doctor. And so do you think he had given your dad that advice before, or was it just because of your recurrent cellulitis and boils that he gave you this advice? Or was it all, did he mention weight at all, or was it just about the skin issues?
So he mentioned it to me. He said, you're going to keep getting these boils and I'm going to keep having to lance them, quotes, until one of us dies.
Yep.
Dang, man. He's old school. He's in his early 90s now. He's retired, but still alive and caring for his wife who was having health problems. But he was blunt and I needed it. Like, just tell it to me straight. And I've been told that a lot of doctors these days, they are kind of under the impression that they shouldn't hurt anybody's little fifis, right? And he hurt my feelings. I cried. He said, until you lose at least 100 pounds. And he said, and I'll tell you exactly how I think you should do that. Cut out the carbs. He had said, if you want to keep in some leafy greens, pickles, cucumbers, diet soda, go ahead. That's not going to, quote, that's not going to kill you. He said, but everything else, I don't want you to touch it. I don't care if it is your birthday. Don't touch it. And he gave me a little brochure, and on the front was animal products, some of those leafy greens, pickles, cheese, eggs, and diet soda. And on the back was everything else I thought I was doing right eating. Fat-free cereal, all cereal, pasta. He said, don't even eat fruit. I have not had a piece of fruit since that doctor's appointment. It'll be 20 years. Like, I took him really seriously. I'm not saying nobody can ever have fruit, but what he said was so impactful on my health that day that I just ran with it. I went back. He had said, do this for 1 year and come back and see me. But at that point, I said, well, I'll probably see you before that because I kept having to come in for these boils. And he said, we'll see, but I don't think so. And he was right. I have never had to have another boil ant since. So because I felt so good and I stopped getting the boils, I think the boils were the main reason he gave that advice to me. My dad said, well, he never told it to me quite that way. But when I went back 1 year later, Dr. Dunlap, which is funny to people because you use the word Dunlap. You were the first one who said, like, cause your belly Dunlapped over your belt or something like that.
Yep.
Well, his real name is Dr. Benjamin Dunlap, my hero for sure. 1 year later, he said, what did you do? Because I'd lost 80 pounds by then. And I said, I did not even on my birthday. I didn't have any of those things. And he said, nobody ever listens to me. But so apparently he did give similar advice. That made me think maybe he sometimes does. But
and
yeah, my dad.
Did you ever get a chance to question him about, Doc, where did you even get this advice? Why did you even think to tell me that? And the handout, do you? I would love to have a look at that now. And do you think you read Dr. Atkins' book, or I mean, where did that come from?
I do not know. But when I went back at that year appointment, I said, I've just been blown away. I cannot get over how different I feel. I'm so glad you told me to do that. And he said, well, if it was good enough for the Inuits, I figure it's good enough for us. And I was like, I did not know what that meant.
Right. Like, Inuit, who's that?
I did not find out what he meant until I heard that word again. I didn't like go home and Google it. This was 2010. I don't know. Could I have Googled it?
Maybe,
but I didn't.
maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But
You could have info-seeked it, or what was the other search? Info-seek, or maybe Yahoo.
I could have gone maybe to the card catalog at my library.
Right. The old internet. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
a few years later, when I met Charles Washington and some of the old school folks over at Zeroing In on Health, they kept talking about the Inuits. And I thought, well, I've heard that word before, but I had heard it first from Dr. Dunlap, but I don't know what exactly he read to make him aware of that.
Yeah. I'd give anything to know. That's so interesting. Now, so let's just refresh everybody's memory. This is literally the week before he gave you this advice, and you had a huge patch of cellulitis on the back of your leg, which, if people don't know, this is it can be either inflammation or infection or both, but it's very painful. It can sometimes have an odor. It can weep and ooze.
Yes.
It's just not something you want on your body. And let's talk about your skin and your nails just in general. Did you have a lot of trouble with acne in your teenage years? And what changes in your fingernails have you seen since you started eating only meat at age 25?
Yeah, so I was on Accutane as a teenager, and anybody who knows anything about Accutane knows you don't want to be on it.
Right.
It is not a gentle drug. And I took that because I just had patches of acne that I could not get rid of. Again, you keep thinking like, am I not scrubbing hard enough? Is it the soap? Is it the soap? And now my skincare routine at night is like, the gentlest soap and a rag. And then what do? I always said, I have such oily, problematic skin. What I do now is take a bunch of beef tallow, a bunch of beef fat, and smear it all over myself, go to bed, and still no acne problem anymore. So, as for my nails, I don't remember ever thinking I had a problem with nails before. Haven't noticed any big change in that category, but skin for sure. It wasn't just boils. It was acne too.
Do you remember Seabreeze? I used to use that stuff, and it stunk so bad. It burned so bad because growing up as a teenager, I had moderate acne. It was not, I was pimply pizza face, but it wasn't terrible. Not bad enough for Accutane. Yeah. And so after I went through that experience as a teenager, it didn't help at all. I feel like half the time it made it worse. Yeah. And then as a doctor, I can remember telling patients, if it stinks or burns, do not put it on your face. Yes. And because it's just going to flare it up. But I grew up just like you, thinking, well, I guess my face is dirty. Yeah. My face is extra oily. This oil is a problem. Not realizing as a teenager, no, your skin has got the oil for a reason. It's actually good. It's not bad. But my acne was 100% caused by my diet as well. I had acne well into my 20s, but when I started adopting a proper human diet, I don't have any trouble with acne. And my skincare routine now is even less than yours. My skincare routine is when I take a shower, I let the water run on my face.
There you go.
And that's it. And then at bedtime, I put some beef tallow on my lips. Nice. And that's literally the entire extent of my 55-year-old skincare routine. I literally don't do anything at all, which I think that's common for a lot of men, but most women would be like, oh my God, you don't wash your face? No, my face is not dirty. Now, if I trip and fall in the mud,
right,
I'll wash my face because my face isn't dirty, but just on a daily basis, no, my face is not dirty. Why would I wash it? And I love that your skincare routine has dwindled to water and a washcloth. That's literally Yeah,
Yes. Now, on days when I put on makeup like today, I'm gonna have to use something to get the makeup off. I mean, it's the equivalent of you tripping and falling in the mud, right? But
exactly. Yeah,
okay, I gotta get off the makeup. But in general, a lot of days I don't wear makeup because I don't feel like I have to cut. I used to, I mean, really cake it on just to cover up. It was like spackle. You just had so much to cover. And now most of the days it's a ball cap, fresh face. It's good.
sure, sure. Now I know that you do a lot of coaching one-on-one and in groups, and it's because of your transformation that people want to know what the heck you did. And so however your doctor figured out about this, who knows? We may never know. I really want you to drive to his house and ask him, where the hell did you get this advice from? What had you read? What did you heard? But people from all over the world now come to you for advice, and you don't have any formal training, and you're not giving medical advice. You're just saying, hey, I did this, maybe you should try this. And people seek you out for your advice, but it's because of this transformation that they're aware of. And what about your mental health? I think that doesn't get talked about nearly as much. Talk to me about the mental health of the beautiful woman on the left hand side versus the beautiful woman on the right hand side.
Thank you for that. So I had a lot of self-doubt and self-consciousness, anxiety. I had trouble sleeping at night, even as a really little kid, all the way growing up. As a little kid, it demonstrated itself in the fact that I couldn't sleep alone in a room hardly ever. I would end up curled up in my parents' floor almost every night. And it's not because I just love them, it's because I would lay awake fearful of death, fearful of somebody breaking in my house, fearful of house fires. I would just have all these crazy scenarios. My brain wouldn't shut off. Then when I got older, I remember I bought this little house by myself when I was about 23 years old. And I had this big oak tree next to it. And I would lay awake at night just worrying that this perfectly healthy giant oak tree was going to crash on my head during the night. I had on my wedding day, I remember feeling like James was only there because he felt trapped to marry me. I genuinely felt that way. I had no self-confidence. I felt like he was way too good for me. He was only marrying because we'd been together and he felt like he was expected to. He did not have the weight problem that I did. And I think it all just fostered, I don't know. I just wasn't well, Dr. Barry. Mentally, so much
I hear you.
anxiety, wasn't well. And now I just lay my head on the pillow and fall asleep without a care in the world. People say, "Did your life change because you lost weight?" No, my weight changed because I changed my diet. And when my diet changed, my brain also changed. They're putting the cart in front of the wrong horse there.
Yeah. Yeah.
My brain isn't healed because I'm a size whatever. My brain is healed because I changed the toxic junk I was putting in my body and I replaced it with pure nutrition, with animal foods, meat, fat for my brain, protein for my body, and none of the stuff I don't need. As my brain changed, my body also happened to change. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I love that. Now, in this picture, you and James were dating. You were on
Correct.
a class trip.
Yeah.
Did you have those? I mean, everybody listening, I think that moms in general, more than dads, have these kind of irrational scenarios playing in their head. What if the roof collapses? What if this tree? Because we got a couple of huge trees outside, and when every time the wind blows, I can see Nisha. I can literally see the thoughts in her head, like, do I need to take these babies to this, more structurally sound room? And how much of that do you think was due to your diet? In other words, tease out, were you having these anxious, irrational fears because you were overweight, because you were insecure, or were these thoughts and feelings organic from the brain? Like, do you
Yeah.
think you had more of an anxiety disorder type symptoms?
So I think, everybody has their own personalities, right? There are going
Yeah.
to be people who are more overprotective and people, and thank goodness, right?
Yeah.
Because they need to be there to protect those of us who are just now going through life all, I think
100%.
you and I have
Yep,
talked about that some before.
we
It's
have.
perfectly normal to have a personality that's just a little more cautious. But when it keeps you awake at night for irrational things where you have no reason to truly believe it, and I know it is the food for me because I can bring it back in the drop of a hat, and I have throughout the years. I mean, we're not talking like I've only been doing this a few months. No, in 20 years, I've gotten a hold of some things that could bring it back, and the number one thing for me is soy. If I go to a restaurant and they use soy sauce or anything on my meat soy based, I will go home that night. I will get leg cramps and doubt, and I will doubt my entire existence. I will doubt myself as a mother, myself as a wife, myself as everything. And I'm like, my gosh, it's the food. People who are living that way, it could be partly personality, and it could also be because something is inflaming your brain. And I really believe that was the majority of for me because I'm actually pretty laid back now. Now my husband is the one who's like, do you think the kids are okay doing this to that? I'm like, they're fine. I'm way the laid back one now.
I love that. I love that. And we have so many people in our community who have adopted either meat heavy keto or ketovore or carnivore. And they're like, my mental health is like night and day. Before I was constantly anxious or I was constantly down in the dumps. And of course, yeah, I was depressed and anxious because I was overweight. I was, had diabetes, whatever.
Right.
But they can tease out. They're like, yeah, maybe some of it was due to the fact that I was overweight and insecure. But the majority of it, it was like my brain just didn't work properly. I worried about silly things I shouldn't have worried about. I got upset about silly things I shouldn't have got upset about. Because, like you said, bro, we all have different personalities. Some of us tend to be laid back and whatever. Some of us are very high strung and we're going to get pissed off at anything. But all of those things seem to get turned down. The overreaction or the over anxiety, the over worry seems to get turned back down to a more normal volume when you remove all of the inflammatory junk from your diet and you just start eating real human food again. Now, give everybody, tell them you've been eating nothing but meat for how many years?
So the first 5 years after I got that advice, so from age 25 to 30, I did not eat any pasta, potatoes, fruit, bread. I cut all of that out. My diet was what I call almost carnivore. I don't know if some people would call it. It wasn't ketovore though, because I wasn't having enough fat. So what I did was I was just eating meat. I didn't know what kind of meat. Like he didn't give a lot of details. You just, I have this one handout, which I wish I still had. I don't. I probably didn't have it more than a few months. Like,
Sure.
it wasn't a
You still
very.
got it here though. You got it
Oh
here.
yeah. So I was eating meat, but I was still eating pickles and the diet soda, sugar-free Jello, like junk, but it was better. It
Right.
automatically it got me a long way. I did that for 5 years. And then in 2000, what would that be? 2004? 2004 to 2009. I think I said that wrong before. That was the 5 years. In 2009 is when I actually met the carnivore community, and they were awesome. And they were like, hey, you look so good. Everybody's sharing the before and after pictures. And I, at that point, had some also. I said, at this point, I'm basically just eating meat because I do not like leafy greens. Instead, I'm having just meat all day with some Diet Dr. Pepper. And they're like, how's that going? I said, pretty good, but I have these intense sugar cravings still. And I did. And that's when they said, if you cut out that Diet Dr. Pepper, that will get better. And I did not want to do that, Dr. Berry, because I
hear
really,
you.
I really liked my Diet Dr. Pepper.
Mhm.
And they said, but if you do this hard thing, it'll actually get much easier. So for 3 days, I really did not like that carnivore community.
Yep.
I'm like, how could you do this to me? Here I was like looking good and enjoying my Diet Dr. Pepper. But in 3 days, they were right. I have not had physical sweet cravings since that day. And I started that on October 23rd, 2009. And that was the last day I've had a vegetable of any kind, or diet soda or any. It's just been meat. So it'll be 15 years this October. That was a long
Gotcha.
answer to a short question.
No, I love it. I love it. And one of our community members, Susan, was just asking that question. How long did it take you to stop craving sugar? And do you crave it now, occasionally,
Right.
every now and then? She said
Yes.
she's good for the first 2.5 months of ketovore and then fell off the wagon, now having those craving problems again.
Yeah. So for 5 years, I craved sugar nonstop, but I was keeping that part of the brain engaged every single day. It was thinking about sweet. And even though I felt like, oh, if I chug, and I do mean it, I was chugging diet soda all day long to fix this, to get my fix, my sweet
Yep.
fix.
Yep.
And then when I cut it out, and these very smart carnivores said, no sweet taste. If it registers to you as sweet, I don't care if it's your toothpaste, a mouthwash, a Tic Tac, or a piece of gum. If it registers as sweet to your tongue, do not have it. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Okay, you hardcore peeps. So that's what I did. For me, the physical cravings lasted a full 3 days. On day 4, it's like, oh, that's much better. Now, I'd be lying if I said I've never smelled something that thought, oh, that smells nice. But to me, that's different from a physical, like, I must have this. Now I can walk through a bakery and it smells pleasant. I have no need to go get it whatsoever. Like, it doesn't, I'm not in chains to it anymore. But it took, for me, I know other people are not me. Total abstinence for me to get there.
And that's very similar to my story as well. Even when I had started cutting the carbs, I was draining 2-liter Diet Mountain Dew and Diet Dr. Pepper. Those were my poisons of choice. And they're sugar-free, right? And so I'm like, they can't be that bad. But I still would have the sugar cravings and just cravings in general for just typically higher carb stuff.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't even stop them cold turkey. I had to wean them down by diluting them with sparkling water. And so I was still getting the fizz, but was getting less and less of that sweet taste. And I've noticed a huge difference. And so let me be very clear for everybody listening. I don't think everybody has a sugar addiction. It's just like alcohol. Some people can have a drink on the weekend or whatever, and they don't think about it for months. They don't think about it until the next time they go out, and they just have a drink because everybody else is having a drink. It doesn't call to them. It doesn't speak to them. But there is a significant subset of adults who absolutely have sugar addiction. And they have sugar cravings, and like you, it's almost constant. Like if you're not thinking about sugar, it's because you're sucking down a Diet Coke or whatever, and that's temporarily masking that sugar craving. But there's so much shame around this because a lot of the bigger health influencers will say there's no such thing as sugar craving. That's foolishness. Don't even listen to that. And so people are like, well, I guess I'm just broken. I don't know. And so I think that just hearing somebody like you say, yeah, I was totally addicted to sugar and I craved it every day.
Yes.
I think that's a very powerful thing to admit. And when people hear that, they're like, so it is real. Because Kelly's a pretty common sense person. She's not going to just be throwing junk out there that's not true. No. So I think that gives people. And then also, like you said, any sweet taste on the tongue, I don't think that's true for everybody, but I think there's a significant subset of people that diet sodas, all the sugar-free keto treats, it just keeps the addiction going and it keeps the sugar craving going. And, you might be satisfying that right now with Diet Coke or with, keto pancakes that are technically sugar-free, but that addiction is still there, and you're going to be in a situation where there ain't no keto pancakes, and you're going to wind up eating a bunch of stupid shit that you shouldn't have eaten, and quite likely fall off of a proper human diet wagon, and then you're going to suffer from weeks or months of eating junk again. And so people need to understand this is real, and if you ignore it or you downplay it or you try to act like that's not really what's going on, that's only going to hurt your health in the long run.
Yeah. For me, it's now very similar to, so I've never smoked cigarettes. I never sit around as a non-smoker thinking, whew, wish I could have a cigarette, right? It's not in my system. For people who quit smoking, what if once a day they sat down to 2 puffs of a cigarette though? every
Right.
day. Just it engages that part of the brain. They'd say, oh, I'm treating myself because that keeps me from, yeah, it might keep you from 3 packs a day, but at the same time, it's going to keep you from ever being completely free from it. I am completely free from the cravings, but I am with you 100%. If I could still have diet soda and have all of the freedom that I wanted and everything, I would still do it.
Yep.
I've heard you say, when you say sparkling water, I am not triggered by the ones that even have the flavoring, the natural flavoring, but no sweeteners. Those don't send me into orbit, but I know some folks who cannot even have a flavor like a Waterloo, or
Yep.
else they're triggered. So, we have different boundaries, I suppose, for what sends us into a tailspin.
Yeah, there's a normal distribution curve of everything in human physiology, and the degree to which you're addicted to sugar, that you crave sugar, that's on that normal distribution curve. Some people, it does not bother them at all.
Yeah.
Nisha's never liked sweets her entire life, and so they just don't call to her. I, however, have eaten so many of Granny Berry's cakes and pies and cookies that I grew up, I was a sugar hound. I had to have
Yes.
it. And she always made me wait and have it for dessert, but still, that was that recurrent signal, that recurrent dopamine hit. And I just had to get it all out of my mouth. And a lot of people are like, well, they don't want to call it what it is, Kelly, that it's a sweet addiction. And I think it's a sweet addiction for many people, not just a sugar addiction. And
Oh,
that,
me too.
I think that's important to say. And they're like, well, I have allulose in my coffee. And then, I'm like, okay, well, why not just continue to keep weaning that down? Why do you want to keep doing that? Why? Because there's a study going to come out next week that whatever sweetener you're using causes cancer of the eyeball or something. That's coming. It's going to happen because they love to have that scaremongering. Wouldn't you be happy if when that article came out, you're like, oh yeah, I don't even use that anymore, so I don't care.
Yeah, I love just not thinking about it. And I
Right.
say
It's
that
so
as somebody
freeing.
I had a fridge that was just constantly, I was just mixing up Jello and trying to get that next hit. And now my mind is just so much calmer not
Yeah.
thinking about it. I could probably add back, any number of sweeteners and probably not gain a pound, but it's not about that. It's about my peace, my
Yeah.
food peace about it. And I don't want to give that up.
Exactly. Now, I know, Kelly Hogan, you have some beautiful children,
I do.
and you get this question as often as I do, I'm sure. I get questions like, how old does a kid need to be before they can eat a carnivore diet? Is it safe for kids who are fill in the blank years old? Is it
Yeah.
safe for them to eat meat?
Oh, God.
And my stance on this, but I'm sure you get these questions all
I
the
do.
time.
Mhm.
Why do people think that young children cannot eat red meat or any meat? Where did that come from? And walk us through how you weaned your kids onto solid food and at what age?
Oh, I'd be happy to. Well, these ideas are put into our heads very often from the medical community. When I was pregnant, I had already been total carnivore for 9 months when I found out I was pregnant. And I was feeling so good. And I don't mean almost carnivore. I did those 5 years. And then that's when I met, the carnivore community and became like total carnivore. 9 months later, I found out I was pregnant. And my doctor was like, now listen, it's very important when you're pregnant
Now,
to
this
eat.
this is a different doctor. This is your
Oh,
OBGYN. Yeah.
absolutely. OBGYN, she said it is really important to eat the rainbow while you're pregnant. So that's what I want you to think about is the most colorful foods. And I'm thinking, I eat brown and red for rare meat. That's it. These are my colors. A little yellow for my eggs. It's not very rainbowish. And she was using some fear tactics, frankly. I left that appointment feeling like if I don't do this, it's bad for my baby.
Like what? What did she say?
Um, she said that people who don't eat enough fiber when they're pregnant will very often end up with very bad hemorrhoids, that hemorrhoids are common in pregnancy, which, by the way, I had no issues with. I did not vomit. I've been pregnant. I've had 3 healthy children. I did not vomit one time through all 3 pregnancies. I had 0 constipation issues, no hemorrhoid issues, none of that. But at that first appointment, when she's talking about how important it is to have the rainbow for the development of their brains, they're also very smart, Dr. Berry. And I'm not just saying that because I'm their mom,
I
they
know.
really are.
I know.
Uh, I went to the Zeroing In on Health, the carnivore forum back in those days. And I said, do we know that this is okay? How do we know? How do we know? And Charles Washington said, what kind of baby are you carrying? It's like, not sure what you mean by that. And he said, is it a human fetus? I said, yes. He's like,
Hopefully.
and are you human? Yes. He's like, what has changed your health over the last, few years? And I said, it's eating this way. He's like, what on earth makes anybody think that because it's an unborn human child, it's going to be any different from what's working for you as a human adult? That's true. And of course, he also reminded me of the civilizations of people through humanity who did not purposefully go to the store and eat the rainbow year round. There was no store, there was no rainbow. I said, okay, that made me feel much better. So I carried on. I didn't change a thing. Babies were all born healthy. When they were old enough, now I did it differently for baby 1 versus baby 3 because we learned stuff. Baby 1, I was pureeing all of the meats. I would just throw chuck roast, soft, tender chuck roast into the blender and made all these baby foods. And that was her first food, beef. She ate nothing but beef for a really long time. At some point, I let her taste squash. She was not a fan, but she did like carrots. So I'll let her have some carrots. It's fine. My kids are not total carnivores. If they want some veggies, they can have them. But my youngest, Annie, she hates vegetables and she got jackpot for the mom because I don't make her eat any of them. I don't care, right? If she wants it, she can have it, but I don't care. The way I weaned baby number 3, I found out about baby-led weaning, where if they are old enough to pick it up and put it to their own mouth, just let them gnaw on it.
Yep.
Well, I would put, ribs with some meat on it, chicken legs with some meat on it, hunks of steak. She would pick it up. I actually did this for baby 2 and 3. Pick it up, suck on that. You'd notice a difference in the diaper. I know it's crude, but they're getting some nutrients.
Yep.
And I wasn't spending all day in the kitchen pureeing meat. So the effect was the same, but it was a lot easier.
Yep. That's such brilliant advice. And, Nisha and I raised Bonnie and Beckett both. We use baby-led weaning principles, not the diet they recommend, but the principles.
Right. Yes.
And I think that's so ancestrally appropriate, because one of the filters I put every new thought through is, what did we do 50,000 years ago? How did we handle this?
Right.
And I think Charles' advice to you, he probably meant 50,000 years ago, what the hell do you think pregnant women ate? Yes. Meat. That's what they ate. And then what was the first food that they gave their baby? Was it, corn check cereal? No, it was meat. And so but it never ceases to amaze me how people can have such concocted ideas that literally came from the big food manufacturers. How could it come from anywhere else? That you shouldn't feed your baby meat, that pregnant women shouldn't eat meat. Oh my God, no, don't eat seafood, don't eat deli meat. And it's like, what are you talking about? Yeah. So your babies now, tell us their ages and what's their diet like now, that they're out of the nest, so to speak, and they're, you're not enforcing any kind of dietary principles on them.
No. All right. First of all, I don't know if you'll be able to see. There we go.
Yeah.
So I've got to hold my finger on it. Oh, trats. Okay. Julia is 13. Thomas is 11 and Annie is 8. They all love meat. My husband is not a carnivore either, but we're all big meat eaters. It's just that when I fix, when we grill a huge mess of steaks, he'll also have the salad and the sweet potato. The kids, if they want the sweet potato, they'll have it also. None of them like salads. Annie barely even touches the sweet potato. She's with me. She would be perfectly happy every single day with just a massive plate of fatty, delicious meat every day. We all love ribs and flanking ribs, those Asian short ribs. Oh my gosh. Yeah. We could all do that. We're all fans of a big fatty pork chop, chicken wings. We all eat eggs and bacon. Yeah. They're lucky. Let's just call it what it is, Dr. Barry. They're just lucky.
And so no signs in them, since they've eaten so much meat, and at least one of them's a teenager now, no sign of skin issues, no boils, no
Oh,
cellulitis, no learning difficulties, no delay in maturation. Like they're completely normal, happy, healthy, intelligent kids.
I'm gonna brag, especially on my son
Yes, please
Thomas.
do. Yes.
He takes the state, they all have to take state testing, right? They are schooled children. They take the end of grade exams. Thomas gets 100s on them. Julia comes in usually around 96. I mean, we're talking percentile of all of the kids in North Carolina. They're really smart kids. And I don't think it's genetics necessarily.
Yeah.
I
And your
think,
oldest daughter
yeah,
is 13 now.
13. She has porcelain skin. Me at age 13. Oh my word.
So you're telling me she doesn't really have any trouble at all with acne, even though you had severe acne?
None. No, none of them have skin troubles or weight problems, or they're just smart little cutie pies. And I'm praise the Lord, I'm so thankful they're not
Yeah.
going through some of the stuff I went through. By the time I was 13, I was already dieting and struggling and feeling like every time my mom used the word walk, it was about me personally.
Right.
I took it personally when we took
Sure.
family walks. Yeah.
Sure. I understand. A question from one of our community members, Pamela. How many meals on average do you have a day? And let me expand on that. How has that changed
Yes.
since when you started this at 25 meal? How many meals a day on average?
Yep. So when I first started out, I was doing 3 meals a day. That's what I'd always eaten. The doctor didn't say one word about changing any eating windows. He just told me to change what I was eating. So I kept 3 meals a day for many years. I don't know, maybe around year halfway through. So maybe around year 10 from when I first started, I started doing some intermittent fasting, and I did it in the form of I stopped being hungry for breakfast. Well, full disclosure, I was also chugging coffee all morning. So
Sure.
there's probably a reason I was not hungry for breakfast, but I didn't eat breakfast. And I started to see that as like, oh, this is a very good thing. And I think for some people that works beautifully. It didn't kill me either. It was fine. I just drank my coffee all morning. Then I would eat burger patties for lunch and burger patties for dinner. Did that for many years. And then about 2 years ago, are you familiar with Sarah Kleiner? She's really into circadian rhythm and
Mhm.
stuff. Okay. She started talking about, hey, if you're going to intermittent fast, it would actually be better if you cut your window off earlier. So maybe have breakfast and lunch. And I thought, I don't know about that, Sarah. I'm really good at coffee and I don't want to drink coffee in the evenings, but I decided I would just give it a shot to
Yep.
see. So I started having a nice sized breakfast. I started small because I really wasn't hungry, but very quickly it went from 2 eggs to 3 eggs to 4 eggs to then I was having 5 eggs every morning. Now I wake up and have burger patties in the mornings. I have an appetite for breakfast now. In fact, I don't allow myself coffee until I've had my breakfast because it was such an appetite suppressant.
Yep.
So I eat breakfast and I eat lunch and I still eat dinner. So I'm still not intermittent fasting in the evenings. I eat 3 times a day.
3 times a day.
Yeah.
And you've said you've lost over 100 pounds. What's your total weight loss?
130. I haven't even done the math lately. So I started off at 262 and this morning I was 133. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 100, 120, 130
Yeah.
pounds.
Yeah.
And you've done this predominantly eating 3 meals a day. And I think intermittent fasting is very powerful
Yeah.
therapeutic intervention, but not everybody needs that.
All right.
And I think that it's important to say.
Yes. And people who are eating carbs should probably fast as much as they possibly can, because it's just less poison coming in. I wish my husband would take up fasting. If he's not going to do carnivore or at least keto and low carb, for heaven's sakes, do some fasting because it's less junk coming in. But when somebody is eating just meat, I think it's a little less important to say you must stop eating for these certain hours because I'm not putting poison in. I'm eating beautiful food.
Yep, I love that. If you could just reach through the screen and talk to a 13-year-old who's not your daughter, who's got acne, whose weight they just keep gaining weight. They can't figure out how to get a handle on that. Their periods are irregular. They keep having acne, skin problems, little infections, infected hair follicles
Yep.
under their arms, in their groin. Talk to a young girl who's 13,
Yeah.
14, 15, 16, what advice would you give them if you could reach into their life?
Yeah. I would just say, darling, you are not dirty. You don't have bad genes. It's not your soap. You're you're not broken. You are perfectly human, and humans need some basic things. And one of them isn't carbs, that's not required, but fat and protein really are. And I would also say, I'm not going to try, I say this frequently, whether somebody's 13 or 78. I'm not going to try to talk you into doing what I do at all. But if you've been trying something else for a long time and it's not working, I'm just going to give you an idea of something else to try and then let your body decide. If you were to give it 90 days, which sounds like so long, it's nothing. 90 days in the course of a human life is nothing. But if you were to only eat just steaks, fish, eggs, ribs, chicken wings, more steaks, bacon. Hello. Have those foods only for the next 90 days. Then ask your body, look in the mirror, take some photos before and after. Then let your skin decide, was your skin better before or now? How is your satiety? How is your energy? How's your sleep? Your moods? Just give it 90 days and don't ever trust Kelly Hogan or Dr. Berry. We don't need you to trust us. I'm not trying to prove it. I just want someone to try and then let their own results dictate, okay, then where do you go from here?
Yep. So many kids, well, some people would use the word indoctrinated,
Yeah.
that they've been literally taught by television programs and in their school that a plant-based diet is the healthiest diet for planet Earth
Yeah.
and the healthiest diet for you personally. That's a big sell. And
Yeah.
if someone's been, if people you trust and look up to have been telling you that message since you were old enough to understand the language you speak, and then here comes this woman who used to weigh 260 pounds and have terrible skin saying, honey, you just need to eat meat. Okay. That's a huge leap for them to be like, so I'm supposed to be selfish and harm the planet to improve my health. And it's like the message is, and it's brilliant marketing on the part of
Yeah.
the plant-based people, because now they've really got you, because now you can't even try it for 90 days to improve your own personal health, because that's selfish and you might blow up the planet if you do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, kids today are in such a conundrum.
Yes. Yeah, they
What?
have to go against everything they've been taught. They now have to feel like they are ruining the earth, that they are harming the animals, that they're a bad person. All of these barriers that are put up against them just to feel better. It is a crying shame. And like you said, imagine the amount of money and propaganda that it took to convince people that cows are more of a problem than jet planes and barges. Like, that's wild. Your food is being shipped from another country on a barge, and mine lived up the street in a field and ate grass, and you think my food is the problem? It is quite a lot of obstacles that kids have to overcome. And even adults, it's like it does not compute. My daughter told me that her teacher had asked her before, what does your mom do for a living? Just shooting the breeze at school, PE teacher.
Sure.
And Julia had said something like she's into nutrition and has a YouTube channel and does something, even I have a hard time answering that question, to be honest. So I'm sure she was like, it's a little different. She didn't say the word carnivore, but she talked about health and nutrition. Well, this PE teacher, I pulled up to the school and she was the one opening car doors. And she said, hey, so I heard that is it vegan or vegetarian? I was like, I'm neither. And she said, oh, I thought that's what Julia said. I said, sure. I'm thinking, no way would Julia say that. I said, I don't know what she said, but it wasn't that. So I asked Julia that day, what did you tell your PE teacher? She's like, I just told her you were into health and nutrition. That was the assumption. You want to know what's extra stupid about that, Dr. Berry? On my van, there are 3 massive, I mean, bigger than the side of my head, stickers that say, eat the meat, save the humans. My license plate is team meat. And this woman still does not compute. If you're into health and nutrition, surely you're a vegetarian at least. No.
Wow. That cognitive dissonance, we
Yes.
see that at every level of society, from the gym teacher all the way up to elected politicians.
Yep.
If you're talking health or nutrition, it must be vegan or plant-based
Right.
or vegetarian. That's because that's the only option.
Yeah.
And I love it that you are making it your life's purpose to improve people's health all over the world. I'm sure you talk to people from all over the world to help them improve their health and to basically dispel these myths that have been pushed into people's heads against their will, I might add.
Right.
And I love it. I love talking with you and hearing these stories. And I know that they're going to help people out there. If people are just have fallen in love with you, never heard of you before, but now they're in love with you after this interview, where can they find you and follow you?
Thank you. The YouTube channel is My Zero Carb Life, and my website, myzerocarblife.com. Yeah, thank
I
you.
love it. I love it. Kelly Hogan, thank you so much for doing this with me. This will be live on YouTube later this evening or tomorrow. You're welcome to share it out. Also, you're welcome to jump in the comments if people have questions and answer questions as well. The great Kelly Hogan, guys, if you didn't know her before, you know her now, because this is the real Kelly Hogan right here. There ain't no sugarcoating it. Thank you very much, Kelly.
Thank you, Dr. Barry. Always a
All right.
pleasure.